South East Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
South East Radio.
The Save Our Restaurants Coalition has established a three-step plan to ensure the viability of restaurants after COVID-19. Stuart Fitzgerald from the Save Our Restaurants Coalition joins me now to discuss the detail behind the plan. Stuart, before we discuss the Save Our Restaurants Coalition, perhaps you might tell us about your own involvement in the restaurant industry.
Thanks, Karl. Good to be here. I am from a company that holds the master franchise rights in Ireland for a UK-based fast food chain called Leon Restaurants. So we operate two restaurants currently in Dublin, one in Millennium Walkway and one in Temple Bar. And we have plans to roll out several more over the coming years. So that's my involvement.
And what about the impact that COVID-19 has had on that specific business?
Well, we closed both restaurants. We took the decision to temporarily close both restaurants on the 14th of March. We're not operating any sales channels. We're not operating delivery. We're not doing click and collect or in-store. So COVID has had a massive impact on, short-term impact on the business. We remain positive about the outlook for Leon in Ireland, but we absolutely feel that liquidity is going to be required across the sector if restaurant businesses are going to get back on their feet. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event that no one could have planned for and no one could have expected. And supports are going to be required to help restaurateurs, there's no doubt.
And out of interest, why did you take the decision not to adapt the business into collection or delivery?
For two reasons. One, given our locations, there isn't a huge amount of residential around our two locations, so they're both locations that are driven by office workers, by shoppers and by tourists, and none of those three consumer types are present at the moment in the city centre. That was the first reason. And the second then is brand awareness. Because we're a new-to-market brand, we only launched in May of last year. We just felt that from a penetration point of view, it didn't make sense. The third reason, I suppose, and I said there was two, there's probably three, is just to manage from a health and wellness point of view for the team members. There was a lot of uncertainty when we made the decision as to what the impact from a health point of view that COVID had and how best to manage in-store operations to account for that. And the health and wellness of our guests and of our team members are of paramount importance. So we took the decision across a number of health and wellness and economic factors, and that's where we came to in the end.
Now, Stuart, the reason I've asked you to join us on this morning's programme is to discuss the Save Our Restaurants Coalition. What is it and who's behind it?
Save Our Restaurants Coalition is a collective of industry professionals who came together to offer some critical thinking and to offer some fresh perspectives around ways in which the government and policymakers could support the restaurant sector in the wake of the COVID crisis. And really our idea was to start with a blank sheet of paper and just consider really what's required to reinvigorate the sector as we come out of the lockdown period and in the 24 months that follow that lockdown period, and to offer a perspective from an industry point of view that hopefully can facilitate some thinking at government level that can lead to some creative problem solving.
And the plan itself focuses on three key steps. But did you engage in a consultation process with the wider restaurant community before deciding on these specific measures?
We took a lot of input from various contacts that we have across the sector, and we have huge support now, a huge support base of all different restaurant types, from fine dining to fast food across the sector. And really we feel that the views that are expressed within our plan are representative of the challenges that are faced by operators up and down the country. So yes, we did canvass opinions and ideas, and certainly the steering committee that put this paper together is from a very diverse background of restaurant types. And we think that's enabled us to come up with a plan that while no plan is perfect, and certainly this situation is so unprecedented, no plan could be perfect, but we certainly believe that the areas that we're discussing and that we're trying to problem solve around are the ones that are most critical for restaurant survival in Ireland at the moment.
And how does your plan differ to what has been put out by the Restaurant Association of Ireland?
Our idea wasn't to critique what anyone else was doing or to second guess what anyone else was doing. In fact, our idea and our mandate really was just to come at this with fresh thinking, with new ideas, with the perspective of business owners, and try to determine what supports could really help in an equitable way and in a balanced way to get viable businesses back open in the wake of COVID, and that was how we came about it.
The first step focuses on reducing labour costs in the sector. How is this going to be achieved?
So there's currently a format in place that the state has put in place, the temporary wage subsidy scheme, and our intention is that scheme would be extended and that a step-down methodology would be put in place for businesses to access that support based on turnover profile post-COVID. So under our plan, the current state subsidy is paid where the business is down between 80 and 100% on turnover on 2019 figures. 70% of the subsidy is paid where turnover is down between 50 and 80%, and 50% of a subsidy is paid where turnover is down between 25 and 50%. So what we're looking to do is come up with equitable measures that support the businesses that need it most, that wean businesses off the support once trade begins to pick up, and that ultimately aims to support viability in the sector and looks to support as many jobs as possible, because one of our key aims is to get our people back to work as quickly as we can.
Now, really what you're proposing is a step-down approach, so as the business recovers, the amount of support that they're getting from revenue would reduce. How would a scheme like this be administered by the Revenue Commissioners?
Look, in our view, it would be self-assessed as it currently is and subject to 12-month audit. So at the end of every 12-month period, it would be independently audited. And any discrepancies between assumptions that were made by the operator and the reality would be corrected at that point. So the current COVID scheme is self-assessed as well, as most or all taxes in Ireland are. And it really, once you come to submit returns at the end of the period, then any discrepancies that may have arisen can be corrected at that point. But certainly our view is a self-assessment basis, and then subject to independent audit at the end of the period.
Now, moving on to occupancy costs next. What needs to happen in this regard?
So we believe that there's some very good international evidence which shows a way that's equitable for landlords and for tenants. So, key to this from our point of view is the relationship between the tenant and the landlord. And absolutely what we're not advocating is for tenants to walk away from obligations with landlords. And landlords have to be looked after in this instance as well, and they have obligations on their side which aren't going to go away. So we're proposing again is an equitable plan that we believe fits the interests of the tenant and of the landlord as the economy recovers. We've based our approach on a model that's in place in Denmark at the moment, and again it's a step-down approach based on providing the liquidity and the support to the businesses that need it most. Within our occupancy costs, we're looking at things like rent, rates, water waste, street furniture charges, business insurance, landlord insurance and utilities. And what we're suggesting is that 100% of the grant is given towards occupancy costs as long as the business is not permitted to open. So during the lockdown period, 80% of the grant towards occupancy costs occurs where turnover is down between 80 and 100% on 2019 figures. 50% of the grant where turnover is down 50 to 80%, and 25% of the grant where turnover is down 25 to 50%. So this step-down methodology is common across our plan, and the idea is to provide the liquidity to the areas and the businesses that need it the most, and to try to find a solution that works for all stakeholders, landlords in this case and tenants.
And what type of commitment are you seeking from landlords with regard to reducing occupancy costs?
Well, similar to what's happened in other markets, we are looking for a contribution, or we do suggest that it's practical for a contribution to come from both tenants and from landlords. So the plan allows for landlords to give a 20% reduction pro rata, and then the tenant to pick up the remainder, allowing for the funding that comes in from the liquidity measure from the state.
Now, the third step in your plan is to seek assistance with debt repayment facilities. Specifically, what supports are restaurant owners looking for in this regard?
So what we're looking to do is to work again with lending institutions to try to find a collaborative and equitable solution that works. And obviously there is a material amount of debt in the restaurant sector. So we're looking to liaise with lending institutions in terms of bank loans, in terms of overdrafts, mortgages, finance leases and hire purchases. And what we're looking to do is to reschedule all debt repayments, interest and capital, during the restaurant sector lockdown period, we're looking to introduce an interest-only repayment period for the 12 months post the restaurant sector lockdown period. This is on legacy debt, not on new debt that will be drawn, and restructured capital payments on a repayment capacity basis during months 13 to 24 post-restaurant sector lockdown. So our plan deals with the 24 months after the lockdown is lifted, because we feel that's what's going to be required to reinvigorate the economy and to get consumers back out there engaging with restaurants in the way that they previously did. And during that third period, that restructured capital period, full interest will obviously be paid. The final part of that is that covenant modification would be required, because a situation like that with bank repayment rescheduling could technically lead to covenant breaches. So that would have to be part of the infrastructure of it as well. So really what we're looking for is state support to put the framework in place to enable lending institutions and borrowers to work together to find solutions that work. And absolutely the intention is to support businesses that are viable and put into place a repayment plan that makes sense, and that as businesses emerge from this crisis, that the debt that's been rescheduled gets repaid in full.
And just on that topic, Nick Ashmore, the CEO of the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland, joined us on the programme a number of weeks ago, and he said that the SBCI are currently developing a new scheme which will allow business owners to restructure existing debt over a longer period of time. Is that something that will achieve your objective?
Without seeing the detail of it, it's hard to comment, but it's a very positive step, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the detail of that plan. And I think the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland has offered some very good solutions across the lending spectrum, not just from traditional lenders like banks, but from non-traditional lenders as well. So I think that access of funding in the system is absolutely required, and it's welcomed, and it'll be interesting to see exactly how that manifests. But on the face of it, could that be a solution that works for this? Potentially it could, and like with everything, the devil will be in the detail.
So finally, has your three-step plan been submitted to government? And if so, have you received any feedback to date?
We've had initial discussions with contacts in government, and the feedback is positive, and we'll continue to push the plan hard now. There's a number of moving parts in the background, but we believe that what we've developed is a plan that's fair, equitable, makes sense from a state point of view and from a restaurant owner point of view, and most importantly will support jobs and get people back to work in a way that's sustainable, and that makes sense both from a societal point of view and from an economic point of view.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Stuart Fitzgerald from the Save Our Restaurants Coalition, and I wish Stuart and the other members of the coalition every success with this initiative.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
South